Hello there and welcome. Today we talk about whether a visit to Glashütte is worth it for normal people and why I visited it in the first place. Now, what do I mean by normal people? I mean anyone who is not a jeweler's best customer or has any connections to the watch industry. So most of the people that watch this video or casually collect watches like me. But why even talk about something like this? Why would anyone want to visit Glashütte? Watchmaking has always been about time, and everything that happens is tied to time, history so to speak. We all share reasons why we are passionate about horology, but we also differentiate in some points. The history that brands like Omega have with the Moonwatch or Rolex with the Explorer is what is important to us, because we still see the history in our modern counterparts. Visiting a city that has been home to 11 watchmakers for over 100 years and has its own watchmaking museum surely must be a special experience for watch geeks, right? Before answering this question, I would like to explain why I visited Glashütte in the first place. A friend of mine, also a watch person, spontaneously asked if I wanted to go on a trip with him, but he didn't have any idea where to go yet. When I told him that I'd love to see the art gallery in Dresden, we juggled around with ideas for a while and came up with a little road trip. The tour started on the first day in Dresden, went via Glashütte to Saxon Switzerland and ended in Prague. Glashütte was just a convenient stopover for us between Dresden and Saxon Switzerland and not a longer stay. While arriving in the small German town, I was a little excited what we would see there, so we first took a tour through the whole town on foot. A few small jewelry stores, a Nomos boutique, and then the big buildings of the famous brands like Nomos, Lange & Söhne and so on. Sounds exciting at first, but you can't see anything from the street because the windows are either high up or made of frosted glass. Still, we kept walking and saw an open door across the street at a Nomos building. A young man was apparently working on a watch, and I thought about filming it since my camera was already around my neck. The second he noticed us, he slammed the door shut. You need to know that while I love watches, I'm not a fan of the brand's behavior or the authorized dealers, hence my name. In 2017, when visiting Baselworld, and every time I met the industry, it was always with a perceived mile of distance and the bare minimum of niceties from the brands. Closing the door was just a continuation of that pattern for me. Because there are no secrets to assembling a watch, you can literally see the assembly of most watches on YouTube. If you're now asking yourself, why didn't they book a tour with one of the manufacturers? There is a simple answer to that. There isn't a single one available for normal people right now. Nomos and Lange & Söhne had a factory tour, which both brands discontinued due to COVID-19. But Lange also told us on the phone that the tour would never be offered again, because it wasn't profitable. We don't know if Nomos will offer them again, because they're the only company that still offers tours, and we've called them all. But back to our visit and the next stop, Glashütte's Watchmaking Museum. In advance, we've learned that the museum has pieces provided by all the different manufacturers, and they go back to the late 1800s. This certainly excited us, because it's not every day that you see watches from Lange & Söhne. Upon arriving, we bought tickets, stowed our bags, and were welcomed by 3 lovely Glashütte original tourbillon watches. The museum is arranged by date, from oldest to newest, except for a display case in the first room, where a movement of each brand is exhibited. Until the mid-1900s, there are mainly pocket watches and the tools to make them exhibited, as to be expected. If you read Watchmaking by George Daniels, you will recognize a lot of the tools and technologies that are shown and explained. From some of the earliest wristwatch movements to beautifully ornated gold pocket watches, everything is represented. I especially enjoyed one room with rotary plates and special minimal lighting. Just look at that footage. Even though I've got no gimbal and I had to hold the camera, it's beautiful. All in all, this entire section of pocket watches shows the visitor how watchmaking has evolved over 85 years and the great strides the industry made. Much of what can be seen there from the 1950s can also be found in today's watchmaking. After that display, we slowly descend into wristwatches. There are about 6 displays of early wristwatches in perfect condition, with a lot of well-known designs but also some special dials and cases. After that, there is an enormous glass box with tons of watches hanging by their strap. There are a lot of quartz watches since we are in the midst of the quartz crisis of the 1970s, but also a few manual and automatic pieces. Finally, there is one room to cover the current state of watchmaking, and this is where my critique starts. The wristwatch section in general is small, and after the 1980s there are barely any watches on display. Nomos had exactly 2 watches on display, and Lange 1 current watch, the Lange 1. The most interesting up-to-date watches were the 3 tourbillon pieces at the beginning, and that's it. Seeing the progression of Glashütte's brands over 100 years or more is interesting, don't get me wrong. But is it worth the trip to a small German town and your time? Sadly, in my opinion, it isn't if you're mainly into wristwatches and modern watchmaking technology. The town doesn't offer much besides a nice view and the museum. If you're not invited by a jeweler or a watchmaker, everything is shut tight and you won't even get a peek. The Star Observatory of Wempe is also just a nice building to look at, but nothing more without an invitation. Everything is locked and even the food in cafes is expensive for such a small town. Comparing it to Dresden and the art gallery there might not be fair size-wise, but Dresden is a better deal, even from a watch lover's perspective, sadly. What do you think about the watch industry and their behavior? There are a few welcoming and nice watch brands out there, like Arose, where everybody can ask questions and look at things. In my opinion, the industry should follow that path more and don't lock everything behind money, only because it's a luxury industry. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and if it wasn't your cup of tea, tell me why in the comments down below.